Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
If Premier Jason Kenney and Health Minister Tyler Shandro think Albertans are going to soon forget about what happened here at GraceLife, what the two of them did here to the congregation at GraceLife, I think they've got another thing coming. Because although this church building is being returned to its congregation, a pastor, Tim Stevens, still sits in jail in Calgary for the crime of not closing his own church. His wife and children were without him this Father's Day. And I hope the province learned that the GraceLife building here, well, it was just a comfortable place to worship. But the church is and has always been the people, and the church won because the tyrants never stopped them from meeting, not even once. After 85 days in captivity, the GraceLife Church building is finally being returned to the congregation it belongs to. By July 1st, the province of Alberta says that it will take the mall cops, the porta-potties, and the portable fencing and move on. On April 7th, in a dawn raid, the Alberta government, so Alberta Health Services with the help of the local RCMP, seized this building behind me. It's the GraceLife Church building west of Edmonton. The building itself was fenced off at the time behind multiple layers of portable fencing and tarping to obscure that it was ever a church to begin with, and then heavily fortified, turning it into a temporary RCMP garrison. It was a show of force and intimidation meant to bring this church congregation into compliance with the government's coronavirus health regulations. You see, for much of the winter, this church behind me here flung their doors open to a willing and grateful Christian faith community in defiance of the ever-evolving capacity restrictions on places of worship. Sometimes the restrictions were 15% of capacity, sometimes they were 30%. But here at GraceLife, it was 100% capacity. GraceLife also didn't force the congregation here to wear masks or socially distance from each other, because according to GraceLife, they must meet all together in person every week as part of their fundamental practice of their faith. For all of this, the church came under surveillance from the local RCMP and Alberta Health Services, who entered the church on several occasions to gather evidence during worship services. That's in contravention of the Canadian Criminal Code. Officials were also stopped from entering the church during Easter by church elders. Imagine the gall. The church's defiance of the law in obedience to God resulted in thousands of dollars in fines. And the pastor here, James Coates, spent 35 days in Edmonton's maximum security remand facility for failing to abide by an undertaking that required him to violate his conscience and his religion to make his congregation abide by the onerous public health orders. Now, while Pastor Coates was in jail, his associate pastor, Jake Spence, stepped up to the pulpit every week facing jail time himself, continuing to hold services here. Now, when the Alberta government realized that arresting the pastor wouldn't stop the congregation from meeting, the government arrested the church building as well. There were protests here in the immediate aftermath of the province seizing the church property and then fortifying it with cops and private security guards. Now, it's been nearly 3 months since the property seizure. The police presence here has all but disappeared, and instead the province has left their porta-potties on the church's doorstep and mall cops from Paladin Security here to make sure that no Christians get the inconvenient idea that they might actually be able to worship their God. And the congregation, well, they've moved to meeting at a clandestine, rotating location every Sunday to avoid authorities. Taking the building has not stopped this community of believers from meeting together every Sunday the way they say they're called to do by God. The congregation just meets in secret now, the way the persecuted early Christian church did, the way persecuted Christians in some of the more oppressive parts of the world are forced to do today. But this is Alberta, and they say we're strong and free. Now, Tuesday night, I received word from the members of GraceLife congregation that they were informed that on July 1st, the province's official relaunch date, the church would be returned to the congregation. Now, the province can take their temporary church prison, their portable toilets, and their mall cops, and they can put it into storage until the next emergency that bureaucrats and politicians will use to justify the persecution of Christians and the constant infringement of the rights of Albertans to practice their religion and their right of free assembly. Because if the province did it once, they're going to do it again. And at the end of the day, I wonder if the province has learned anything from all of this. If Premier Jason Kenney and Health Minister Tyler Shandro think Albertans are going to soon forget about what happened here at GraceLife, what the two of them did here to the congregation at GraceLife, I think they've got another thing coming. Because although this church building is being returned to its congregation, a pastor, Tim Stevens, still sits in jail in Calgary for the crime of not closing his own church. His wife and children were without him this Father's Day. And I hope the province learned that the GraceLife building here, well, it was just a comfortable place to worship. But the church is and has always been the people, and the church won because the tyrants never stopped them from meeting, not even once. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. Pastor Tim Stevens still sits in a Calgary jail for the crime of refusing to limit his religious practice to comply with the wishes of the state. My friend and colleague Adam Sos is on a name and shame campaign to bring awareness to what Health Minister Tyler Shandro has done to that good man of God, to support Adam's billboard truck campaign and to sign his petition. Please visit shameonshandro.com.